Hello everyone, thanks for coming. I'm glad there's people today. There's a main stage and you guys made the trip to the cave, essentially. So thank you very much. I'm Thyborg. I'm going to talk about the Cosmos Hub today. Informal System is I work for Informal System. It's a core contributor to the Cosmos Hub and to the rest of the Cosmos stack. Today I want to talk specifically about the Cosmos Hub and some ideas that we are considering at Informal System in terms of what we should do next on the roadmap. We shipped shared security, specifically replicate security last year. We are onboarding consumer chain at the moment. We already have 2 live. These are Neutron and Lido, and Stride, not Lido. And there's a number of other things in the pipeline that I want to talk about today. So it's a three-step process, a 3-step plan, an easy 3-step plan. First, become the hub of the Atom Economic Zone. That's well on the way. Second, become the hub of the IBC appchains. And third, become the hub of the IBC rollups. So we're going to go through each of these sections one by one. First one being the Atom Economic Zone. So you can imagine that as concentric circles. You have the Cosmos Hub at the center. Replicate security app chains are going to be limited. There are going to be 5 to 10 of them. It's not a highly scalable setup. It's a very interesting setup, and we're going to talk about it, but it's not very scalable. The second concentric circle is going to be the opt-in security app chains. So validators are able to opt in to validates, and that's much more scalable. So for that, we can imagine hundreds of them. And mesh security is obviously something that the Cosmos Hub is well positioned to do. Like, this is something that is very interesting for the hub, that Osmosis led the development of, but something that the Cosmos Hub is naturally a leader for mesh security because of the high stake that it has and the position in the ecosystem. And that's infinitely scalable, so as many app chains as there is at the moment. It could be thousands. Replicate security is an interesting topic, and people talk a lot about the drawbacks and the problems with replicate security. I want to address these problems one by one by talking about the economics. So the first thing that people say is that validators are going to suffer. Validators are going to not make money. It's going to be a centralization problem, and it's going to run out the small validators out of the Cosmos Hub set. If you look at the current validators and the way they decide and take decisions, you will notice that most of the chains, and these are some of the most successful app chains in Cosmos. They are by market cap the biggest one. I took out some of the chains like Kava and the other one I took out was Kronos, because they're not really that integrated within the IBC ecosystem. But the other ones, like Osmosis, for instance, Akash and Stride, most of the validators don't break even. Like you can see on Osmosis, only 31% of the validators break even. And that's with the Osmosis 2.0 tokenomics. Same thing for Akash, even less validators break even. Stride, only one of them break even at the moment, using the inflation parameters that they have. So the Cosmos Hub is really where the money is made at the moment for all these validators. The second thing people talk about is that it's too expensive. Supposedly, replicate security is too expensive. Now, that's because for all the chains, it doesn't feel expensive because they use inflation to sponsor and pay the validators. But right now, in this column, you can see how much Injective, Osmosis, Axelar, Akash, and Stride pay in terms of inflation costs that they have to subsidize for the validators to stay online. That's huge. Like Injective, for instance, is $52 million. That's with the current bonded rate. So now, if you want to get to a similar level of security as the hub, we did some projection here, or rather some estimation about what it would cost with 66% bonded rate, the same as the hub, which provides a similar level of security. And that's with an APR of 21%. That would be $72 million that Injective would have to spend on security. So if you compare that to what Neutron, Stride, and Duality are going to pay, we're going to talk about that in the next slide. This is way, way higher, like orders of magnitude higher. So this is what the Cosmos Hub could potentially be charging for the service of providing security. So it's a very interesting metric. Now let's see what we expect from these consumer chains. So all these estimations are made for the first year. So these are pretty conservative estimations because obviously Neutron is meant to grow, Stride is meant to grow, and all these consumer chains all these consumer chains are meant to grow. But for the first year, Neutron is going to share transaction fees and MEV. I'm going to skip to the next slide and show you the results. I've put the Blockworks estimation as a way to compare what we did at Informal and what they did. But you can see, like, on the base case scenario, it's about 1 million per year that Neutron is meant to generate on the first year. And for the Cosmos Hub to break even on that, it has to generate about $800,000 when you take a validator cost of $400 per month. So that includes the server cost, essentially. Like, it doesn't include manpower and HR costs. But you can see, like, even in the first year, at least the server cost would break even. Stride. So I put here all the tables, and you will find this talk online. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but we did some TVL. We based that on the TVL. So Stride right now has $35 million in TVL. We took 48 for the first year. The base case is 73. This is also based, like, the growth rate is based on Lido's growth rate. And the result of that is that Stride would, break even essentially the first year. So, like I mentioned, it's $800,000. On the base case, we expect that to break even. Blockworks was a little more optimistic about Stride, I guess. But in both cases, like, we break even. Duality is obviously sharing 100% of any value that is generated on their chain. So it looks better for Duality, both looking at transaction fees and MEV. MEV, we're taking the numbers from Skip. So this is based on what Skip is analyzing is there per transaction on Osmosis. And what we get for Duality is essentially $1.5 million on the base case. So we break even. This is just the first year. It's normal for a business to not break even for the first year. The Cosmos Hub would break even with this projection. Now, Duality obviously, like, set the standard for what a consumer chain should do by not using a separate token. But I think even if I would expect more consumer chain to follow the way Duality did, but I think it's not the only way that new consumer chain get to the Cosmos Hub, and also they only use Atom. So here I want to talk about one interesting thing that the Cosmos Hub can do, and really should do, is use the large amount of capital that is sitting in the community pool, about 3.3 million atoms. That's about $30 million with the current stats. Obviously, like, some people are talking about changing the tokenomics, so that would potentially evolve. But right now, with the community pool tax at 10%, we have 3.3 million atoms in the community pool. So we could use, on top of the capital that is already available, some of the inflation that is reduce the APR for stakers. So right now, if you discount the 10% to the 29% of the APR that stakers are currently getting, you get 19%. If it stays at 19% and we just don't do anything, there would be $80 million on the first year in the community pool. So that's a budget of $80 million if we don't change anything. Now, if we change something, meaning we reduce inflation, we take away some of the APR and dedicate it to acquisition, we would get $125 million. If we take all the APR for acquisition, we get $500 million. So what does that mean for the Cosmos Hub? That means it could buy stuff. It could buy Injective, it could buy Osmosis, it could buy XLR, it could buy Akash and Stride, get rid of these tokens, and essentially have all the value accrual go to Atom. So the Cosmos Hub could be in a position to acquire whatever product has product market fits in Cosmos quite easily. Like the third column here is number of years it would take for this acquisition to go through based on the metrics I just mentioned. It would take a little more than half a year to buy Osmosis. So this is just to give you an idea of the scale of the market cap and how easy it would be for these things to happen. And we would go from a model where some consumer chain have their own token, like Neutron and Stride, and Duality is using Atom, to a model where everyone is using Atom, and it becomes a proper Atom economic zone. Now, we know that there's a number of other players in the shared security space. Like one of them, well, people may talk about osmosis, but I think the big one is Ethereum. Like we have something called EigenLayer coming up on Ethereum that will allow Ethereum to use shared security and essentially get Ethereum get Ethereum validator slashed for securing other kind of application. So we need to innovate and use, the Cosmos Hub properties that are there already in order to avoid Ethereum from securing everything and the Cosmos Hub from not being that useful. So what do? Atomic IBC is a really interesting idea. So right now, when you have when you look at the Atom Economic Zone, you have 4 chains: the Hub, Neutron, Stride, and Duality, and they all run the Cosmos SDK and Comet BFT. So there's 4 different Comet BFT process. The idea would be to have a single Comet BFT process. So there would be 4 apps, 4 Cosmos SDKs, 1 single Comet BFT process. What that would allow, essentially, all the transactions would be going to the same mempool. And so the top of the block, you could order this transaction so that you can make sure that a sequence of transactions, this is called atomic transactions, are being processed in an order that makes sense for arbitrage, makes sense for flash loans, makes sense for a number of interesting DeFi things. Like you could imagine, for instance, liquidation on actually, so Yumi is not represented here, but they are one of the consumer chains that are on the list. Liquidation could be processed on Duality and immediately swapped on Duality. Sorry, processed on Yumi, swapped on Duality. So the way this would work, all the transactions are going to the same mempool. The top of the block would be for a special fee. You would be able to order this transaction in a specific order, MEV style, actually Atom Interchain Scalar style. And then the rest of the block would be for parallel transaction, and that would provide like the scalability that Ethereum doesn't have. So you get the best of both worlds essentially. You get the scalability of Cosmos with the composability of Ethereum. Opt-in security, that's coming soon. So we have already on the forum an explanation of how we want to enable fraud opt-in security. So for that we need fraud proofs. Fraud proofs are not there yet. There's many people working on it. There's the rollup people working on it. They're always 6 months away or 3 months away. So one thing that we intend to do at Informal is move ahead with a different setup where we wouldn't have to wait for permissionless fraud proof to work, but rather use the fact that we have a very active governance, forum governance process, and we are able to slash validators without having to prove automatically that incorrect execution happened on the consumer chain. So I invite you to check this. I don't want to go too deep into that because we have a lot to talk about. The next one is generalized ICS. So that's essentially inspired by EigenLayer, where you can slash for everything. And that enables a bunch of new use cases. So this requires COSM WASM on the hub, but you will have restaking smart contracts on the Cosmos Hub, the same way you have restaking smart contracts on Ethereum for EigenLayer. That means that not just consumer chain can tap into the security of the Cosmos Hub, but also DA services, keepers, Oracle, bridges, a whole new set of use cases that would enable. So not just securing consumer chains and chains, but any kind of application that would potentially require it. So that's for the Atom Economic Zone. Like right now we have replicated security, opt-in and mesh. This is what's coming most likely this year. Now, originally in the Cosmos Hub vision that Ethan and Jay wrote 4 years back now, or at least it was like the Cosmos Hub was born 4 years back. The hub was supposed to be the hub of the IBC app chains. So the hub was supposed to be at the center of the IBC transfers. It was supposed to be the first on the map of zone app. So how do we make that happen? Well, it's much easier when we start from being the hub of the Atom Economic Zone. So Duality, Neutron, Stride, and the others, they are already going to have commercial relationship with the hub. They are already going to connect to the hub. They don't need to connect to every other IBC chain. This is expensive. Like you have to run archive nodes, you have to pay relayers. Like there's a cost associated with that. And these consumer chains are just getting started. they already have to pay the Cosmos hub, so it would make sense for them to just connect to the hub and then let the hub handle transaction outside of the atomic economic zone. So that's easy. Now, once you have that set up, and once you have this connection set up, then you would want project like Kujira to connect to not necessarily Kujira to Osmosis, because this is a common route, but any new project doesn't have to connect to every new project and incur the cost that means. Like it costs maybe $500 to run these to connect to a new chain per month for a relayer to do the work of relaying. So when you sum that up, it becomes to 50 chains. This becomes very, very quickly unpractical. So the idea would be that because the atomic economic zone is formed and these connections are already happening, you would be able to use that as a stepping stone to become the hub of the IBC app chains. And this is mostly a business development effort. Like it's not a technical hard lift to do intermediary chain kind of multi-hop routing. So easy win for the Cosmos hub. And then the next step is obviously, all these other ecosystem like Avalanche subnets and Polkadot parachain. It's not reasonable to expect that they would connect to every IBC Cosmos chain. So they could pass through the hub just as easily as Kujira could connect to Osmosis through the hub. And here we get, I don't know, they claim that they have 200 subnets. They have at least 20 parachains live. So these are a number of transactions and economic activity that would go through the Cosmos hub. And so it's expensive right now to do IBC transfers, but it would be even more expensive to do IBC trust minimized IBC transfer. So what is trust minimized? So this is something that the Celestia people are talking a lot about. Like essentially on IBC right now, you don't verify the state. You don't verify the state transition on the counterparty chain. You just trust the validators on the counterparty chain that they sign the right thing, that the transaction happened correctly on the signing chain. So what rollup have that app chains don't have at the moment is this ability to prove that the state transition was performed correctly. And they do that by having Celestia or any kind of shared security layer, any kind of shared DA layer that they can pull the data from. And Celestia is making the data available to them. Now, that requires ZK technology, which is something that's, could easily be coming to the Cosmos hub. And so you will have chains like Osmosis creating ZK proofs. So you have a prover on Osmosis, like clients for every other Cosmos chain on the Cosmos hub. So instead of having ZK-like clients for every chain, you would route through the Cosmos hub. And these ZK-like clients on the Cosmos hub would be the validation would happen on the Cosmos hub, and you would have another hub to other IBC app chains. So it would be ZK IBC. And because it's expensive to make proof, because it's expensive to verify proof, again, economies of scale using the Cosmos hub. So last stage of this easy three-step roadmap, the hub of the IBC rollup. First one, it's kind of an obvious one, is securing settlement layers. So ICS is great. I'm sure you want to show this one. So ICS is great because settlement layers, basically they have to be, like the software that does settlement has to be customized for the kind of rollup that is settling on the chain. So for instance, for Eclipse rollups who use the Solana VM, you have a different kind of settlement than for sovereign rollups or rollkit rollups, or any rollup needs a different kind of settlement. So instead of having to build a settlement layer for everything, you could have Neutron, Duality, Eclipse becoming the settlement layers. I think Neutron has already announced plans of doing that. Eclipse, that's the whole purpose of the project. These settlement layers need stake. Like right now, they have no economic security. If these rollups are successful and the settlement layer is insecure, that's a big problem. So the Cosmos Hub is in a position to secure these platforms quite easily. And all the rollups would use Celestia for DA. So that's a nice way to go about it. But in the same way that the Cosmos Hub can acquire app chain, it could also acquire settlement layers. So this is essentially this slide where we would take the settlement layers from Duality, take the settlement layer from Eclipse, and put it on the Cosmos Hub. And that way, the Cosmos Hub itself, like the blockchain itself, would become the place where all the liquidity is bridged. And in addition to an IBC hub, that would make the Cosmos Hub a liquidity hub. Which again, for the narrative, for the metrics, this is like an important win. So once you have a Cosmos Hub that is the center of the IBC world, that is a liquidity hub, that all the liquidity is logged there in escrow, then the Atom Economic Zone becomes a very exclusive place to be. Like all these, and in addition to atomic IBC, highly composable with each other, like that becomes the place that every Cosmos chain wants to be. And so that means that people like Stargaze, Yumi, Polymer, like would have to fight essentially to get in. And that's a nice place to be for the Cosmos Hub because it can essentially charge a lot more than it does at the moment. So what I would expect is that the Atom Economic Zone becomes very exclusive. The fees go up substantially. It becomes a highly coveted spot. And the one that make money can stay. The one that don't make money have to get out. And that's how that's how I really see like things going over the next couple of years. So my slide got stuck. I think the next one was the conclusion. So essentially, it's not that difficult to get a proper, viable business model. We start with the Atom Economic Zone. We make that a very attractive place to be. We make sure that we benefit from network effects, strong network effects within the zone. We build atomic composability. From that stepping stone, we connect to the rest of the IBC ecosystem. We take center stage, and we are well prepared for the next wave, essentially, of app-specific chains and rollup. Thanks, everyone. That's my talk.